Angel Maturino Resendez, the railroad killer, the killer who rode the rails. In the early 1990s, law enforcement across the United States began noticing a chilling pattern. Bodies of women were being found along railway lines, seemingly abandoned by killers who vanished without a trace. Victims were discovered in small towns, underpasses, and desolate stretches of track in Texas, Illinois, and beyond. The perpetrator traveled the rails, hopping freight trains like a phantom, committing murders with brutal efficiency. The man behind these murders was Angel Maturino Resendez, a Mexican national later dubbed the Railroad Killer. His reign of terror exposed not only the vulnerability of transient populations and rural communities, but also the challenges of catching a predator who exploited mobility and invisibility. Angel's early life was of poverty, abuse, and migration. He was born August 1st, 1959, in Luzucar de Matamoros, Puebla, Mexico. His childhood was marked by extreme poverty and instability. Accounts indicate he was abused by family members and experienced neglect that left him emotionally stunted. Early on, Resendez displayed the tendencies toward cruelty, reportedly killing animals in his youth, a red flag in the psychological profile of many serial offenders. Seeking work and opportunity, he crossed into the United States illegally in the late 1970s. Like many migrants, he took menial jobs, harvesting crops, laboring on construction sites, and riding freight trains to reach distant assignments. His transient lifestyle provided him anonymity and the perfect cover for crimes that would span decades in multiple states. Psychologists analyzing his background often point to a combination of childhood trauma, social marginalization, and a compulsive need for control as key factors in the development of his criminal pathology. The first confirmed murder in the U.S. is believed to have occurred in 1986, though some victims may have preceded this date. His typical victim profile were women who were alone, vulnerable, and often working in rural and industrial areas. Some reports suggest that he may have killed as many as 15 to 22 victims, though the true number remains uncertain due to his mobility and lack of pattern detection in rural areas. The methods he employed were varied but consistently brutal. Strangulation, blunt force trauma, and occasionally stabbing. He would often abandon bodies near railroads, giving him the advantage of quick escape and reduced risk of identification. This methodology, combined with his knowledge of trains and remote terrain, made him exceptionally difficult to track. In 1998, authorities noticed a chilling similarity in multiple cases across states. In Texas alone, several women were found murdered near railroad tracks. Investigators dubbed the murders the work of a railroad killer, recognizing the geographic pattern that followed train lines rather than city streets. What made Resendez so dangerous was his mobility. Unlike many serial killers who operate within a defined territory, he moved constantly, crossing state and national lines. This mobility complicated jurisdictional investigations. Police departments in different states often failed to connect cases until patterns emerged through forensic and geographic profiling. So in June of 1999, law enforcement finally apprehended Resendez in Texas after a dramatic encounter. He had attempted to evade officers, but was cornered by local authorities who acted on a tip regarding his suspicious presence near a freight yard. Upon arrest, Resendez provided conflicting confessions, admitting to multiple murders, while sometimes exaggerating the total number of victims. Investigators faced the challenging task of verifying each claim, traveling across state lines and cross-referencing missing persons reports. Forensic analysis revealed his signature patterns. Victims had been strangled using ligatures that he carried. Some bodies were staged in public view to terrorize the local population, and in several cases he had returned to view his work, an act consistent with other organized psychopathic killers. So the trial and the conviction of Angel Maturino Resendez began in 2001 in Texas. Prosecutors detailed his crimes across multiple counties, emphasizing his calculated methods and the terror he inflicted on communities. Resendez attempted to claim insanity, portraying himself as a victim of divine command. He would often speak cryptically about hearing voices, yet psychiatric evaluations concluded that he was competent and fully aware of his actions. The premeditation, mobility, and ability to evade capture demonstrated that his killings were deliberate, not the product of psychosis. He was sentenced to death for the murders committed in Texas. Resendez was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit on June 27, 2006. His psychological profile, Angel Maturino Resendez, is classified as an organized, nomadic serial killer, a profile rare but exceptionally dangerous. Key traits include transience. His mobility allowed him to avoid detection for years. Manipulation and charm. He could present himself as harmless to potential victims and law enforcement alike. Opportunistic predation. He targeted vulnerable women working in isolation. Control and domination. His killings often involved binding or strangulation, emphasizing his need for dominance. Criminologists studying Resendez note that his early life trauma, combined with cultural displacement and poverty, likely contributed to his pathology. Yet these factors alone do not explain his cruelty. The conscious, methodical nature of his murders suggests a deeply ingrained sadism and lack of empathy. The impact that it had on communities, terrorized towns across the Midwest and southern United States. Women living near rail lines or working in isolated industries lived in fear, often traveling in pairs or avoiding certain areas entirely. Law enforcement agencies learned important lessons from this case. Cross-jurisdictional coordination is vital in tracking nomadic killers. Geographic profiling can identify patterns across state and national borders. Vulnerable populations, including transient workers and marginalized women, require greater protection. The railroad killer case prompted federal and local agencies to collaborate on missing persons cases, establishing task forces that continue to operate today. Though Resendez successfully murdered many women, some survived encounters that could have ended in death. One survivor was a farm worker in Texas, reported being grabbed and pulled toward a freight train. She fought back, causing him to flee. Another woman, whose name remains confidential, narrowly escaped when Resendez was distracted by a passing train. Their testimonies were crucial in understanding his behavior, patterns, and methods, helping authorities predict potential next victims. These survivors underscore the precariousness of life for women in isolated environments and the courage required to testify against a powerful predator. The story of Angel Maturino Resendez remains a cautionary tale of how mobility and invisibility can empower a killer. Unlike many serial offenders who operate within a single city or community, he exploited the borders, the gaps, and the blind spots in the system. His case demonstrates that serial killers can thrive when populations are marginalized. Cross-state investigations require collaboration and foresight. Survivors' voices are critical in apprehending dangerous predators. Even today, law enforcement and criminologists study his methods to prevent similar cases, teaching lessons on geographic profiling, transient victimology, and the psychology of nomadic killers. Angel Maturino Resendez rode the rails like a ghost, leaving behind victims' terror and unanswered questions. His life, crimes, and eventual execution remind us that evil can move swiftly, silently, and anywhere, exploiting the gaps in society's attention. The Railroad Killer's story is not just one of horror, but also of resilience. The investigators who pieced together his trail, the survivors who lived to tell their tales, and the families of the lost who demand their loved ones never be forgotten. And that concludes our story about the Railroad Killer.